You step into the yawning darkness of a cave, centuries before fire alarms or flashlights existed. No electricity hums through wires, no battery powers your light, just an endless black void pressing against your skin. But how do you make fire where oxygen barely exists? How do you survive in a world where every breath could extinguish your only source of warmth and safety? You are a caveman, standing at the edge of a discovery that will change everything. Without the oxygen modern flames demand, lighting this underground world feels impossible. Yet somehow, you and your ancestors cracked the code. What did they use? Was it smoke, sparks, mysterious minerals, or something lost to time? What dangers lurked in every flicker of light? And why did mastering fire underground shape the very evolution of human survival? Tonight, you're going to walk inside that shadowy cave and uncover secrets older than history itself. Secrets that prove our ancestors were far cleverer, braver, and more resourceful than you ever imagined. You step into the yawning mouth of the cave, the sudden drop into shadow swallowing the last vestiges of the sun's warmth. The air changes immediately, cooler, damp, and strangely heavy. It clings to your skin like an invisible veil, thick with the scent of earth and something ancient. The world you knew, a place of open skis and rustling leaves, fades behind you as the cave's darkness wraps itself tightly around your shoulders. This is no longer a place of light. It is a realm ruled by absence, a deep silence punctuated only by the drip of distant water and the faint echoes of your own breath. You inhale, but the air tastes different here, stale and thin, as if the cave itself is holding its breath. This underground world is your refuge. Outside, danger lurks in the form of predators and storms you cannot outrun. But here, in this cold stone sanctuary, you are safe, at least in theory. Yet safety in darkness demands a prize that feels almost impossible to grasp: fire. Without light, the shadows are merciless, the unknown becomes a threat, and your survival depends on bringing warmth and clarity to this subterranean abyss. But fire, the very thing you need to conquer the dark, is a creature of air. It feeds on oxygen, craving the invisible breath that stokes its flames. And here, in the belly of the cave, oxygen is scarce, sucked dry by the sealed stone around you. The air is thin, and every flicker of flame risks suffocation. You hold a handful of dry twigs and moss, the fragile kindling you gathered outside, your only hope to birth a flame that will fend off the cold and the fear. Your fingers tremble slightly, whether from the chill or the weight of what you're attempting, you can't tell. You strike stones together, the sharp clack ringing off the cave walls in a sudden burst of sound. Sparks fly, tiny and merciless, chasing the tinder's fibers like desperate moths toward a fading candle. For a brief moment, you think you've succeeded. The air catches a glow, a breath of warmth. But it is cruel and fleeting. The spark is starved, the flame choked, and darkness reclaims its dominion. The paradox sinks in like a stone. You need fire to survive here, but fire cannot survive without oxygen, and oxygen refuses to flow freely in this underground prison. Your survival is a riddle writ in smoke and stone. This is no ordinary challenge. This is a struggle against the very laws of nature, a battle that will test every ounce of your resilience and cunning. Every failed attempt to light a flame feels like a small death, a reminder of the fragility of life in this shadowed world. Yet, even as the cold seeps deeper into your bones, a flicker of something else burns within you. You realize that this is more than a moment of survival. It is a turning point, a quiet crucible where humanity's spirit begins to blaze. How did those before you overcome this impossible puzzle? How did they learn to coax light where there was barely enough air to breathe? The answer lies buried in time, wrapped in the whispers of countless ancestors who stood here, trembling in the dark, refusing to be swallowed whole. You remember the stories whispered by the elders, how the first humans tamed fire not just in the open plains but in the forbidding depths beneath the earth. How they learned that lighting a flame here required more than just sparks. It required understanding the cave itself. It demanded patience, observation, and an intuition that borders on the mystical. Fire was not just a tool, but a fragile ally, dependent on the breath of the cave to live. As you move deeper, the cave seems to close around you like a living thing, its walls slick with moisture and ancient time. The air grows heavier still. You can feel your heartbeat in your ears, the steady drum of life pushing against the stifling stillness. Each breath is a measured act of defiance, each spark a gamble with fate. You pause to listen, the faintest murmur of wind, the subtle shift of air currents, signs that the cave itself might be breathing in its own slow rhythm. Could there be pockets of oxygen hidden in these stone halls? Places where fire could survive if only you knew how to find them. Your hands reach for the simple tools you carry, stones for striking sparks, bones sharpened into scrapers, bundles of dry grass. You think of the ancestors who fashioned these very objects, whose fingers pressed moss and resin into primitive lamps, crafting light from the limited gifts of the earth. These early innovations hint at a secret, a way to survive and even thrive in this hostile world of shadow. But fire is fickle here. You watch as a small flame dances on the edge of a fat lamp, its golden light trembling and swaying in the still air. The flame flickers, hesitant and fragile, casting long, jittering shadows against the cave walls. You know it will not last long unless you feed it carefully, shield it from the suffocating atmosphere. Every breath you take risks starving the flame. Every movement could snuff it out. The lamp is your lifeline, your fragile beacon in the vast darkness, but it is a prisoner of the air as much as you are. And then there is the smoke, thick and choking. It curls and rises, filling the cave with a bitter scent that stings your eyes and fills your lungs with burning. It is a reminder of the danger fire brings in this confined space, a deadly double-edged sword. Too much smoke and you risk asphyxiation. Too little and the cave remains an endless void. You realize that managing smoke becomes as crucial as managing flame. It is a delicate balance, a dance of survival in which a single misstep could mean disaster. But as you wrestle with these dangers, something extraordinary begins to emerge. You start to sense the cave's hidden breath, its subtle currents that carry air from cracks and crevices far beyond where you can see. Somewhere, deep in the stone's embrace, the environment itself conspires with you, offering the tiniest gusts of life-giving oxygen. It is as if the cave, once an enemy, becomes an ally, if only you can learn to listen. You pause again, the warmth of the fading lamp casting a soft glow on the walls. Ancient scratches and faded paintings come into view, testaments to those who came before, who faced this same darkness and dared to illuminate it. Their stories are etched in stone, whispered through time, calling out to you from the shadows. You feel a connection, a thread linking you to a long line of survivors, innovators, dreamers. The struggle to light fire in this cave is not just about warmth or protection. It is about defying the void, about claiming a space for humanity in a world that threatens to consume it. It is a story of resilience, of curiosity pushing through fear, of the relentless drive to transform the impossible into the possible. And as you stand there in the cool, suffocating dark, you begin to understand that this moment, this fight for flame in the belly of the earth, was never just about survival. It was the spark that ignited everything that followed. Because lighting fire where oxygen is scarce is not merely a skill. It is a testament to the indomitable will to live, to adapt, and to illuminate the path forward. What tools did your ancestors craft to conquer this challenge? What knowledge did they pass down through generations, buried beneath layers of time like the charcoal on these cave walls? The answers lie hidden, waiting for you to uncover them. And in that discovery, you find something more profound than flame. You find the enduring light of human ingenuity. The cave breathes around you, silent and expectant, as if waiting for you to unlock its secrets. You strike your stones again, the sharp sound cutting through the stillness, and watch the sparks leap forth. This time, when a flame flickers to life, you hold your breath, not just to keep it alive, but to feel the connection between you and every person who ever faced this darkness and refused to be defeated. You are part of that story now. The story of how fire was born underground, against all odds, in the very places where life seemed impossible. And as the tiny flame grows steadier, casting a warm glow on the ancient walls, you realize something vital. The darkness does not own this cave. Light does. And with it, the human spirit, forever burning bright. If you were there, would you have dared to strike the stone again and again in the suffocating air, hopping for a flame that might never come? Or would you have turned back into the open, leaving the darkness unchallenged? This is the dilemma faced by your ancestors, the first pioneers of fire in the cave, and their choice shaped the course of human history. But that was only the beginning. You crouch beside a dying ember, watching it struggle. It crackles, briefly glows, and then falters into blackened silence. You didn't smother it, you didn't move, but something unseen around you did. It wasn't water, it wasn't wind. It was the absence of something. You feel it in your chest, the shallow pull of breath that doesn't quite satisfy. And that's when the realization begins to set in. You are not alone in needing air. So does fire. You've heard of oxygen, but you've never truly met it until now. Out here in this silent confrontation between heat and the invisible, you start to understand its power. Oxygen is more than just the thing you breathe. It's the lifeblood of combustion, the silent partner in the birth of flame. Without it, fire is just a potential, a promise that never fulfills. It's why a spark alone means nothing. A match can burn bright in the open, but in a sealed cave it gasps. The flame wants to rise, to consume, to dance, but there's no breath left to feed it. You begin to see fire differently, not as a gift, but as a relationship, a chemical conversation. Fuel, heat, and oxygen, this is the ancient triangle. Break one corner and everything collapses. You can gather all the dry wood in the world, strike your stones 100 times, and still sit in the dark if you don't give the fire its air. What makes this revelation more haunting is that the air around you looks the same. There is no smell, no color, no warning, just a slow, creeping starvation. A fire that should blaze simply fades. In the open, oxygen is abundant. Nearly 21% of the atmosphere, always flowing, always fresh. But in a cave, that number falls fast. The deeper you go, the less air moves. The less air moves, the less oxygen arrives. And the more fire you use, the faster it disappears. Each torch you light becomes a thief. Each breath you take robs your flame of what it needs to live. You and the fire are suddenly rivals, both trying to drink from the same dwindling cup. Now imagine being one of the first to realize this. Thousands of years ago, you walk into a cave thinking fire is just fire. You light your torch confident, but as you descend, it dims. The flame flickers, then gutters. Smoke clings to the ceiling, but the warmth never arrives. You strike your stones again, but nothing catches. You don't know the word oxygen. You don't know the science. All you know is that something essential is missing, and that if you can't understand it, you might never find safety underground. That's when you start paying attention. You notice something strange. Torches near the entrance burn strong, bright, even loud. But further inside, they hiss, shrink, sometimes vanish entirely. It's as if the cave is alive, breathing shallowly, offering air in one place, withdrawing it in another. You experiment. You wave your hand above the flame and feel no breeze. You kneel close and breathe deeply, listening to the crackle. You learn to read the fire's mood. When it grows lazy, it's not the wood, it's the air. Modern science will later give names to what you're discovering. It will talk about oxidation, about exothermic reactions, about the critical threshold of 16% oxygen below which flames can no longer survive. It will explain that fire isn't a thing, but a process, a self-sustaining chemical chain reaction that releases energy in the form of heat and light. It will tell you that without enough oxygen molecules to support that chain, the entire system collapses. But back then, you don't need chemistry textbooks. You learn with your eyes, your lungs, your failures. And you begin to sense another invisible enemy, carbon dioxide. Every time fire breathes in oxygen, it exhales CO2, so do you. And in a poorly ventilated cave, that exhalation has nowhere to go. It collects, it thickens. You can't see it, but you can feel it in the tightness in your chest, in the sudden dizziness, in the way your torch dims faster with every minute. Carbon dioxide displaces oxygen, inch by invisible inch, like water rising in a sealed room. Soon, even your fire starts to choke on its own breath. You wonder, how many early humans succumbed to this silent trap? How many thought they had mastered fire, only to be undone by the cave itself? Perhaps some lit fires to stay warm, only to slip into unconsciousness without warning. Perhaps they blamed spirits, curses, bad wood, never realizing that it was simply the slow suffocation of science. This is why the challenge of fire in caves wasn't just physical. It wasn't about rubbing sticks faster or finding better fuel. It was elemental, a war between chemistry and survival, a test of understanding without language, trial by suffocation. But eventually you learn, you adapt. You start to test the air before going deeper. You notice that caves with cracks or chimneys, natural ventilation, allow fire to thrive longer. You begin to choose locations more carefully. You build fire close to openings or near shafts where the ceiling draws smoke upward, creating a weak but vital draft. You start carrying animal fat because it burns longer and hotter, needing less air for more light. You even experiment with multiple smaller flames rather than one big blaze, realizing that many small fires consume less oxygen than a roaring bonfire. And in time, something shifts. Fire, once unpredictable, becomes an extension of your will. You no longer fear it dying suddenly. You learn to give it space, to let it breathe, to feed it just enough without overwhelming your cave's fragile balance. And in doing so, you unlock more than light. You unlock time. Because now you can stay longer. You can draw deeper into the cave's secrets, into its silent art, its animal echoes, its sacred spaces. You begin to paint, to carve, to leave messages for the future, all because you learn to give fire what it needs: oxygen, respect, and room to live. And you begin to realize something profound, something that reshapes your entire view of the world. Fire is not just a force, it's a partner, a dependent, a fragile living thing that exists only because you understand its breath. And that means survival in the ancient world was never just about muscles or weapons or speed. It was about knowledge, pattern recognition, learning how to live with nature's rules and occasionally how to bend them. So the next time you see flame flickering on a cave wall, remember, it didn't appear by accident. It wasn't just sparks and luck. It was a triumph of invisible science, discovered in silence, tested in darkness, and passed on through generations, not with words but with flame. The question is, if you were there, staring at that dying ember, would you have noticed the air? Would you have listened to the silence and understood its warning? Or would you have kept striking stone, hopping for a miracle in a cave that could no longer breathe? Because down here, science was never a luxury. It was the only thing standing between light and the dark. If this made you see fire and air differently, let us know in the comments. Would you have figured out the cave's invisible trap or fallen to its silence? And remember, this was just the beginning. You stand at the edge of a vast, ancient landscape, where dawn's first light barely touches the earth and shadows still reign supreme. Here, fire is not yet a companion but a wild, unpredictable force. You see the faintest flicker of flame dancing on dry grass, sparked by chance, perhaps lightning, perhaps a careless strike of stones. That tiny spark is the first whisper of something that will change everything. You watch it with a mixture of awe and fear, knowing that taming this flicker means claiming power over nature itself. In those early moments, fire is fragile. It lives on chance and care, needing constant attention to survive. You can almost feel the tension. Will the flame live or die? Will it warm your bones or vanish, leaving you shivering in the dark? To keep it alive, you must learn to cradle it, shield it from wind and rain, feed it with the right kindling. It's an act of patience and respect, a fragile dance between human and element. Every breath you blow, every piece of dry wood you place, shapes the flame's fate. You're not just starting a fire, you're stepping into a new relationship with the world. This relationship is more than survival. It's the beginning of control over night, cold, and fear. Around the first campfires, communities gather. The fire becomes a center for stories, for warmth, for safety. It pulls people together in a way nothing else can. But it's still an open-air phenomenon, reliant on the endless supply of fresh air and space. Outside, fire breathes freely. The sky is its chimney. It roars or whispers, but it never suffocates. You don't yet have to wrestle with the constraints that lie deeper underground. But then comes the challenge of the cave. You step into that darker world where the usual rules don't apply. Suddenly, fire's freedom is taken away. The air is heavy, the oxygen sparse, and the smoke has nowhere to escape. The flame that once danced freely now struggles, gasps, and sometimes dies. Here, you realize that taming fire is no longer enough. You must learn to nurture it differently, to adapt to a place that resists your presence. Every torch lit in the cave is a small battle won against suffocation and shadow. This push into the cave forces innovation. You start experimenting. How can you make fire burn longer without choking? How can you create light that doesn't steal all the air? You learn that certain fuels burn cleaner and slower, that small, steady flames survive better than large blazes. You discover ways to manage smoke, to create drafts by using the cave's natural shapes, to position fires near vents or cracks. Each insight is a step forward, a leap in understanding the invisible dynamics at play. The story of early fire use is a story of trial and error, of countless failures leading to rare successes. Imagine the frustration of lighting dozens of fires that die too quickly, the cold creeping in as you struggle to hold onto warmth. But then, the thrill when a fire finally holds, a flicker sustained long enough to light your path, to cook food, to keep predators at bay. It's a small victory with immense consequences. A moment when you realize that mastery over fire means mastery over your environment. And with that mastery comes transformation. The light of fire pushes back darkness, but it also pushes human life into new dimensions. You can explore caves and shelters that were once inaccessible, protect your young from nocturnal threats, and extend your activities beyond the sun's cycle. Fire becomes a tool not just for survival, but for creation, ceremony, and community. The flicker of early light is the spark of civilization itself. Yet you also sense the fragility of this power. Fire can warm you, but it can also betray you. A single misstep can bring destruction. The smoke can choke. The flame can flare unpredictably. This dual nature keeps you alert, constantly learning, constantly adapting. The journey from outdoor campfires to cave fires is not a simple one. It's a crucible of human ingenuity, patience, and resilience. As you hold a torch that refuses to die, you wonder, what drove those first humans to bring fire into the cave's suffocating depths? Was it curiosity, necessity, a yearning to claim even the darkest places as their own? The answers remain hidden in the flickering shadows, waiting for you to discover. If you were there, would you have dared to carry that fragile flame deeper into the unknown? Or would you have stayed where the air was free, the night safer? Because every flicker of early light is a story of courage, of pushing boundaries and rewriting what it means to survive. If you feel the pulse of those first fires and the thrill of discovery, share your thoughts below. How would you have faced the challenge of lighting darkness that breathes against you? And remember, the journey of fire is just beginning. You step deeper into the cave, your eyes straining against the overwhelming blackness. The torch in your hand flickers weakly, barely holding back the shadows that press in from every side. You realize something unsettling. No matter how tightly you clutch this flame, it's never quite enough. The flickering light casts giant, trembling shapes that seem alive, threatening to swallow you whole. And then it hits you. A single torch isn't the final answer. It's just the beginning. Long before you, your ancestors faced this same brutal truth. They understood, even without words, that fire alone couldn't conquer the cave's vast darkness. The light you carry is fragile, consuming precious oxygen and spitting smoke into the cramped space around you. So, how did they push beyond this limitation? How did they extend their reach deeper into the shadows, transforming the cave from a place of fear into a sanctuary of survival? The answer lies in their relentless creativity. From the simplest sparks, they began crafting tools that weren't just flames on sticks, but carefully designed sources of steady light. Bone, resin, and animal fat became their allies, raw materials shaped by necessity and cunning into primitive lamps that burned longer, brighter, and cleaner than any torch could. Imagine holding a small, hollowed-out bone, polished smooth by time and touch. Into this vessel, your ancestors poured melted fat, the dense, slow-burning fuel that dripped like liquid gold. They lit a wick fashioned from dried moss or shredded bark, and suddenly you hold a lamp that casts a steady, warm glow, illuminating the walls without devouring the air around you. It's a quiet revolution against darkness. These lamps were more than just tools, they were survival machines. Unlike torches, which needed constant feeding and were prone to sputtering out in the damp, these fat-fueled lamps burned evenly, producing less smoke and consuming oxygen more slowly. In the suffocating depths of the cave, where every breath of air was precious, such efficiency was a lifesaver. Each flicker was a carefully calculated exchange, a balancing act between light and life. You can almost feel the weight of these innovations in your hands. The smooth curve of a bone lamp, the sticky resin smeared carefully to waterproof and seal it, the thick, oily fat gathered after a successful hunt. Every step speaks of a mind learning, adapting, turning the elements of the earth and animal into allies in a relentless fight against the dark. And it wasn't just about light. These lamps allowed your ancestors to explore hidden corners, to map the cave's twists and turns, to discover new chambers alive with echoes and mysteries. The glow-illuminated walls decorated with primitive paintings, animals, hunts, symbols, messages meant to bridge time and space. Without these innovations, many of these discoveries might have remained lost in shadow. But even with these advances, the battle was far from won. Lamps could still go out unexpectedly, leaving you grasping at blackness. The smoke they produced, though less than torches, still clung stubbornly to the low ceilings, threatening to choke the cave's fragile atmosphere. The careful management of air flow remained a constant concern, as did the ongoing search for better fuels and materials. Each lamp also carried a deeper meaning. Lighting the cave was more than a practical necessity, it was a sacred act. The gentle flame became a symbol of life against death, knowledge against ignorance. To carry a lamp was to carry hope, the fragile promise that no matter how dark the world became, light could still be kindled, nurtured, and passed on. You wonder, standing in this dim glow, what it must have felt like to create the first lamp, to hold that small circle of light, knowing it was your shield against oblivion. Did your ancestors imagine the world beyond the cave walls? Did they dream of the day when light would not be a precious resource but a constant presence? Or did they simply fight day by day, moment by moment, for survival in a world that demanded everything? If you were there, holding that fragile lamp in your hands, would you have dared to push further into the unknown? Would you have trusted that slender flame to guide you through the cave's suffocating darkness? Because in the story of fire and light, these primitive lamps were the quiet heroes, the inventions that transformed caves from prisons of night into places of human story and memory. How do you think early humans felt, holding that first lamp in the oppressive dark? Would you have relied on its fragile glow, or feared the shadows it couldn't reach? And as the light grows, so too does our journey, but there are still depths unexplored, mysteries unsolved. If this chapter kindled a new appreciation for the ingenuity of early light, share your thoughts below. The story is far from over. You step deeper into the cave, and immediately the air grows heavy, thick with silence and an unseen weight pressing down on your chest. You take a breath, but it feels shallow, as if the very atmosphere is holding its breath, waiting. The familiar rush of oxygen you take for granted outside is missing here, replaced by a stillness so profound it's almost suffocating. This is no ordinary darkness. It's a world where even the air conspires against your survival. You strike your flint, hopping for a spark, but the tiny ember flickers and dies almost instantly. You try again, and again. Each time the flame refuses to catch, snuffed out before it can truly live. This isn't failure, it's the cave's silent trap. You are fighting an enemy you cannot see, the absence of oxygen. Outside, fire feeds on the air, breathing in oxygen and exhaling warmth and light. But inside this enclosed, stagnant space, the air is depleted, used up by every flicker of flame and every breath taken by you and your companions. Without fresh ventilation, oxygen levels drop rapidly, turning the cave into a hostile environment not just for life, but for fire itself. It's as if the cave is a living entity, closing in, choking out the spark of life and light. This invisible threat changes everything. You realize that lighting a fire here isn't just about kindling or fuel. It's about managing an environment that fights back. Every flame consumes oxygen. Every breath you take competes with the fire for this precious resource. The more you try to illuminate, the more you starve the very thing you need to survive. It's a cruel paradox, a trap that demands you rethink your entire approach. You imagine your ancestors facing this suffocating puzzle. How many times did they strike and fail, their hopes extinguished by the cave's relentless hunger? How often did darkness win, swallowing explorers whole because the air simply would not sustain their fragile flames? It's a struggle not just of light versus dark, but of life versus the invisible forces of nature itself. Yet in this struggle, a deep knowledge begins to form, a knowledge born from desperation and relentless observation. Your ancestors learned to read the cave's breath, the subtle currents where fresh air seeps in, the tiny fissures that act as natural vents, the parts of the cave that seem to hold life while others suffocate. They discover that fire must be placed carefully, near these lifelines of air, or it will die quickly, leaving only darkness in its wake. This understanding is not accidental. It's the result of countless attempts, countless failures, and the stubborn will to survive. You sense the emotional toll it must have taken, the frustration of darkness one time and again, the hope rekindled with every successful flame. It's a story of endurance, intelligence, and a growing mastery over an environment that seems designed to defeat you. The oxygen trap forces innovation beyond mere fire starting. Your ancestors begin to experiment with smaller, steadier flames that consume less air, or fuels that burn cleaner and longer. They learn to control smoke, guiding it away from their breathing zones, and to arrange their lamps and torches to maximize airflow. The cave becomes a classroom for early science, where survival depends on understanding chemistry and physics in their rawest forms. You feel the weight of that knowledge as you navigate the suffocating stillness. Every breath, every flicker of flame is a calculated risk, a fragile balance between light and life. The cave is no longer just a shelter. It is a battleground where every spark is a victory and every failure a step closer to understanding. And yet, the cave's silence hides another secret. This oxygen trap shapes not only how your ancestors light their way, but how they live, move, and think. The limits of air force them to slow down, to consider every action carefully, to respect the delicate balance that sustains them. The suffocating dark teaches patience, resilience, and humility in the face of nature's relentless grip. Standing here, you ask yourself, how would you have faced this invisible enemy? Would you have persevered through the repeated failures, the choking smoke, the fatting flames? Or would the cave's breath have driven you back into the open, into the safer, freer air outside? Because in the struggle against the oxygen trap, you glimpse a profound truth about human survival. It is not just the strength of body or fire, but the strength of mind and spirit to adapt that lights the way forward. How do you think you would have coped with the suffocating stillness of the cave? Would the relentless challenge of lighting fire in such an environment have pushed you to innovate or forced you to retreat? If the silent battle between flame and air has intrigued you, share your thoughts below. The story of light and darkness is far from over. You stand at the mouth of the cave, feeling the cool breath of the outside world mix with the stale air inside. It's a fragile dance, this invisible exchange between two worlds, one alive with fresh oxygen, the other heavy and suffocating. You realize that survival here isn't just about lighting a fire. It's about coaxing the very air itself to move, to breathe, to feed the fragile flames that fight against the dark. The cave is a maze, carved by time and water, with hidden chambers and narrow passages that trap stale air like a thick, invisible fog. But nature is never entirely still. Even in this stifling enclosure, subtle currents of air whisper through cracks, fissures, and vents, small openings where fresh breath seeps in from the outside world. These faint breezes are life itself, unseen but essential, fragile yet persistent. Imagine the sharp instincts of your ancestors as they learned to read these subtle signs. A slight coolness on the skin, a faint rustle of dust, a whisper of wind that hints at a hidden opening. They became attuned to the cave's secret pulse, sensing where the air moved and where it stalled. This knowledge was not written in any book but etched into their survival, passed down through countless nights spent balancing between light and suffocation. They discovered that some parts of the cave breathed more than others. Low tunnels aligned just right could channel fresh air deep inside, while high chambers trapped smoke and stale oxygen. By moving their fires and lamps closer to these natural vents, they could keep flames burning longer, light dancing on walls that had never known illumination before. This ancient ventilation was no accident. It was the product of observation and trial, a delicate negotiation between human needs and the cave's stubborn resistance. Your ancestors became masters of their environment, using stones to block off dead ends and funnels to guide airflow, effectively breathing life into the stagnant darkness. They learned to position their lamps and fires strategically, creating small pockets of breathable air that allowed them to explore further, linger longer. The tension between nature's limits and human ingenuity is palpable here. The cave offers refuge but demands respect. It gives life but withholds its most vital element, oxygen, unless carefully coaxed. You can almost feel the pulse of ancient breath, a rhythm your ancestors tuned into with fierce attention and delicate touch. This knowledge transformed more than just survival tactics. It shaped the way early humans moved through their underground worlds, where each step had to consider not just the darkness ahead but the breath beneath their feet. The cave became a living entity with moods, sometimes welcoming with a gentle breeze, sometimes hostile with choking stillness. As you imagine this ancient interplay, you see how human creativity met nature's challenge with quiet determination. Every stone moved, every fire placed near a vent, every crack sealed or opened, was a negotiation, a dialogue with the cave itself. This was early science born not from theory but necessity, a tactile, intuitive understanding of airflow and chemistry that would lay the groundwork for ventilation technologies thousands of years later. And yet, despite this growing mastery, uncertainty always lingered. One wrong move, one misplaced fire, and the delicate balance could shatter. The air could turn toxic with smoke. The flame could sputter out, plunging explorers back into suffocating darkness. This constant risk heightened every moment spent underground, sharpening senses and forging a bond between human and cave that was equal parts fear and respect. You wonder, if you were there, feeling the faint currents of air on your face, would you have the patience and skill to read the cave's breath? Could you become attuned to this invisible life force, coaxing it just enough to survive and thrive? Or would the cave's silence have overwhelmed you, forcing a retreat to the open air above? Because in this delicate dance of wind and flame, you glimpse the birth of an extraordinary human trait, the power to transform nature's barriers into pathways. The breath of the cave is not just air, it is hope, ingenuity, and the first step toward mastering the unseen forces that shape our world. Have you ever noticed how small changes in air can transform a space? Imagine learning to feel that subtle breath in a dark, dangerous cave. What would that teach you about patience and survival? If the ancient secrets of cave ventilation sparked your curiosity, share your thoughts below. Our journey into the depths continues, and the light grows ever more precious. You crouch low on the cold earth, your hands steady but worn by countless trials. In front of you, two sticks, rough, dry, and unyielding, lie poised for a ritual that would define human survival. You press, rub, and spin one stick against the other, feeling the friction build heat, invisible but relentless. Sweat beads on your brow as the wood begins to smoke, a whisper of promise in the thick air. You know that if this tiny ember takes, it could mean life itself. But around you, the cave's suffocating breath steals oxygen away, threatening to snuff out even the faintest spark. This is the ancient dance of fire starting, an elemental struggle where human ingenuity meets the raw forces of nature. Long before matches or lighters, your ancestors coaxed flame from nothing but wood, stone, and sweat. The rhythmic scraping of sticks, the sharp clash of flint against pyrite, and the sudden flash of sparks were acts of both desperation and hope, moments suspended on the edge between darkness and light. But imagine the challenge deep inside the cave, where air is thin and oxygen scarce. Every ember, every spark fights for survival in an environment that wants to swallow it whole. Could the ancient art of friction fire even work here? Or did the cave's suffocating atmosphere render these hard-won skills useless? You begin to understand that success wasn't guaranteed. Rubbing sticks in the open air, where oxygen freely feeds the flame, is one thing. But inside the cave, every ember needed to be coaxed carefully, shielded from the choking stillness that could snuff it out before it grew. Early humans adapted, learning to protect their sparks within nests of dry leaves, bark, or moss, fragile cradles that could nurture a glow until it burst into flame. The striking of flint against stone, another ancient ignition method, also took on new complexity. Sparks born from this violent contact had to find dry tinder quickly or vanish without a trace. You can almost hear the tension of those moments, the spark flashing, the breath held, the desperate hope that it lands just right. Failures were common, but each failure taught something new. Which materials held heat best, where to shelter the spark, how to shield the flicker from suffocating air. You realize these early fire makers were not just laborers but scientists, experimenting with materials and techniques in an ongoing dialogue with their environment. They tested wood from different trees, observed how resin dripped and burned, and learned how moisture could kill or preserve their fragile embers. Their knowledge was tactile and intuitive, written in the scars on their hands and the patterns of their nights. Yet the limitations of the cave environment pushed them further still. If friction and sparks alone weren't enough, what then? Could they create chambers with better airflow? Could they harness natural drafts to feed their flames? Or were they forced to invent entirely new ways to generate and sustain fire underground? You feel the pulse of that ancient struggle, a relentless push against elemental odds. The cave's oxygen trap forced innovation not only in how fire was started, but in how it was nurtured and protected. This was survival at its rawest, a test of patience, skill, and the will to defy nature's barriers. And it wasn't just about warmth or cooking. Fire was a beacon of safety, a guardian against predators lurking just beyond the edge of light. It was the heart of social life, around which stories, rituals, and knowledge were shared. Losing the flame meant plunging back into the primal fear of the unknown, where every shadow could hide a threat. You wonder, if you were there, rubbing sticks or striking stones in the cold cave air? Would you have the resolve to persist through countless failures? Could you have learned to read the subtle signs of a spark's survival in a world designed to extinguish it? Because in this crucible of friction and spark, you witness the birth of one of humanity's most profound achievements, the mastery of fire itself. It is not just a tool, it is the alchemy of transformation, turning raw elements into light, warmth, and life. What would it feel like to create fire from nothing in a place where air itself fights you? Could you have mastered these ancient techniques, or would the cave's silence have claimed your efforts? If the story of fire's first ignition sparks your imagination, share your thoughts below. The journey from darkness to light is far from over. You cradle the small, rough stone bowl in your hands, its surface worn smooth by time and use. Inside, a thick, greasy substance glistens faintly, animal fat rendered down from the hunt, heavy and rich with energy. Nestled within this viscous reservoir is a wick, woven delicately from moss, fibers, or even human hair. This humble object is no mere container. It is a lifeline, a beacon forged from necessity and ingenuity, casting steady light into the abyssal depths of the cave. You bring the wick to life with a careful flick of flame, and immediately a soft, golden glow begins to pulse against the cave walls. Unlike the fickle flicker of a torch or the fragile spark of friction fire, this lamp burns long and steady, its flame fueled by the dense energy trapped in the animal fat. You realize this is not just light, it is control over darkness itself, an extension of your will into a place where shadows rule. Outside the cave, fire dances freely in the breeze, feeding eagerly on the abundant oxygen of open air. But inside, where breath is scarce and every ember fights to survive, the fat lamp reveals its true power. Its slow, smoldering burn consumes oxygen more efficiently than a roaring torch, allowing your ancestors to hold light in places where flames often suffocated. This was technology born from understanding the very chemistry of fire and air, an ancient answer to the cave's cruel challenge. The process of crafting such a lamp was itself a ritual of survival. Animal fat had to be carefully collected and rendered down, purified through trial and error to burn cleanly without choking smoke. The wick had to be just right, not too thick to smother the flame, not too thin to burn away instantly. You can imagine the patience and repeated failures that shaped this delicate balance, as early humans honed a design that could transform darkness into a manageable companion. The fat lamp also altered the way caves were lived in and explored. Its steady glow made it possible to venture further into the labyrinth, to uncover hidden chambers and secrets that torches could never safely illuminate. The light was softer, more reliable, giving a measure of calm in an environment defined by uncertainty. You feel the relief and wonder of those early explorers as they followed this new kind of flame deeper into the earth, uncovering worlds once locked away in shadow. Beyond mere practicality, the fat lamp symbolized a deeper mastery. It bridged the gap between raw survival and emerging culture, a tool that shaped social rituals, storytelling, and communal life in the dark. Around its warm glow, knowledge was shared, fears were soothed, and bonds were forged, knitting individuals into a resilient tribe united by the light they created together. Yet even with this innovation, danger remained. The cave's oxygen trap was never fully tamed. Too many lamps burning in a confined space could quickly turn breathable air into a toxic haze, forcing those who relied on these flames to remain vigilant. Each moment spent in the glow was a negotiation, a balance between the comfort of light and the risk of suffocation. You hold this lamp now, feeling its weight not just as an object but as a symbol of human tenacity. It speaks of a time when every flicker mattered, when survival hinged on understanding and manipulating forces invisible yet deadly. This small, glowing bowl connects you directly to the courage and ingenuity of your ancestors, who faced darkness with nothing but animal fat, a simple wick, and a fierce will to survive. You wonder, if you had held this lamp in your hands, standing at the edge of an endless dark, would you have felt hope or fear? Could you have mastered the delicate art of balancing flame and breath to keep the light alive? Or would the cave have swallowed you whole? Because in the soft, persistent glow of the fat lamp, you see more than just a tool. You see the spark of human innovation, the first step toward bending nature's rules and transforming darkness into a space for life. What do you think it took to perfect such a delicate balance between flame and air? Could you imagine crafting your own fat lamp from scratch, trusting its fragile light in the vast silence of a cave? If this glimpse into ancient technology illuminated something new for you, share your thoughts below. The journey deeper into human ingenuity has only just begun. You step deeper into the cave's embrace, where shadows cling thicker than before, and the air hums with an ancient secret. Here, light does not come solely from the flicker of fat lamps or the stubborn glow of ember. Instead, it glints from strange, shimmering minerals embedded in the rock, hidden treasures that hold the power to ignite and burn in ways that seem almost magical. As you trace your fingers across their rough surfaces, you feel the pulse of chemistry older than human hands, a natural force waiting to be harnessed. Long before modern science explained the spark, your ancestors encountered these enigmatic substances, stones that could flash fire when struck, ores that glowed faintly in the dark, and crystals that whispered of energy trapped in their very atoms. They discovered that certain minerals, when struck together or heated, could produce sparks hot enough to ignite tinder, creating a fire that seemed born from the very earth itself. This was not mere luck, but a secret chemistry hidden beneath layers of stone and time. Imagine the moment of revelation, a sharp crack, a sudden flash, and a spark born not from friction alone, but from a chemical dance within the rock. Flint, pyrite, and other minerals became tools of transformation, enabling your ancestors to conjure fire in places where wood and fat were scarce or oxygen was thin. This knowledge was guarded and passed down, an early form of alchemy blending observation, experimentation, and instinct. But the magic of minerals went beyond sparks. Some caves harbor naturally occurring phosphorescent stones, faintly glowing with eerie light that defied explanation for millennia. These stones offered a ghostly illumination, casting an otherworldly glow on cave walls that seemed alive with spirits. Your ancestors must have seen these lights with awe, perhaps interpreting them as signs or messages from the unseen world, weaving them into rituals and myths that bridged the natural and supernatural. The interplay between mineral sparks and organic fire deepened the mystery of cave lighting. It forced early humans to expand their understanding of what fire could be, not just a simple flame, but a spectrum of light born from earth, chemistry, and human ingenuity. This fusion of natural wonder and practical survival transformed caves from forbidding tombs into places of discovery and meaning. Yet harnessing these mineral fires was no simple task. Sparks could be fleeting, unpredictable, and required precise materials and conditions to catch hold. The risk of failure was high, but the rewards were immense. Fire that could be summoned quickly, repeatedly, even in oxygen-starved caves where traditional flames struggled to survive. It was a secret weapon in the battle against darkness. You can almost feel the pulse of this ancient chemistry beneath your fingertips, a reminder that fire was never just a single element but a complex, living dance of materials and forces. Every spark drawn from stone was a small victory against the vast unknown, a moment when human curiosity cracked open nature's hidden code. What would it have been like to witness that first flash of mineral fire? To hold a stone in your hand and suddenly see light born from Earth's hidden heart? Would you have understood it as magic or the first whisper of science? Could you have harnessed this power, turning mystery into mastery? Because in these glowing stones and fleeting sparks, you glimpse a profound truth: that human survival was never just about brute force or simple tools. It was about unlocking nature's secrets, hidden chemistry that transformed darkness, fear, and silence into light, warmth, and life itself. Have you ever held a stone and wondered what secrets it might hide? How do you think your ancestors felt, turning these minerals into beacons of survival? If the story of minerals and cave magic sparked something in you, share your thoughts below. The light we chase has many origins, and our journey is far from over. You step deeper into the cave's winding corridors, and almost instantly the air thickens around you. It's not just the cold or the dampness anymore, it's the presence of smoke, heavy and unyielding, curling through the tunnels like a living creature. You can taste the acrid bite on your tongue, feel it clawing at your throat, and hear the faint, desperate coughs echoing in the distance. Smoke is a double-edged sword here, a warning and a threat, a lifeline and a silent killer. You think back to the fire that started it all, a flicker of warmth, a fragile glow against the crushing blackness. But now that same fire is betrayed by its own breath. Smoke fills the cave's cramped space, swirling and pooling in the shadows, suffocating the air you need to survive. The very flame meant to bring safety threatens to steal your last breath. You realize immediately that here, in this labyrinth of stone and silence, fire is no simple friend. It is a force you must understand, or it will be the death of you. It's a paradox you can barely grasp. To see in the darkness, you must burn. To burn, you need air. But the fire consumes the oxygen, producing smoke that chokes the air around you. Each exhale feels heavier. Your lungs fill with the thick haze, and every breath is a struggle. The cave, once a refuge from the predators outside, becomes a suffocating trap. You imagine your ancestors, centuries ago, navigating this same nightmare. They lit fires deep underground, desperate for warmth and light, only to find themselves battling the invisible enemy swirling above their heads. Their eyes would water, their throats burn. Some would have fled, coughing and gasping, while others stayed, determined to tame the smoke's cruel dance. Every flicker of flame became a risk, every breath a calculated gamble. You wonder how they could have possibly survived, how they learned the cave's secret language, the silent currents of smoke and air that dictated life and death. At first, it must have felt like a random punishment, light and heat quickly replaced by suffocation and panic. But nature has patterns, even in its harshest moments, and slowly, a profound understanding began to form. You feel it yourself now, the subtle movements of smoke responding to cracks in the cave walls and unseen drafts. It doesn't just drift aimlessly, it flows like a river, finding low pockets to settle into, seeking exits through fissures and crevices. It pools in hollows, swirls in tight corners, and rushes out through narrow vents. This invisible choreography reveals the cave's breathing, the hidden pathways where fresh air seeps in, and the stagnant traps that spell danger. You realize that mastering smoke meant mastering the cave itself. Fires had to be built carefully, in places where natural drafts could whisk away the choking haze. Maybe a niche was carved in the rock, or a small chimney fashioned to draw the smoke out. Sometimes the fire had to be smaller, burning cooler and slower to preserve precious oxygen. Each choice was a delicate balance. Too little light and the darkness returned. Too much fire and the smoke would consume the air you needed to survive. The cave, once a place of primal fear, began to transform under this new knowledge. Smoke became a guide, a living map that led your ancestors away from danger and toward fresh air. By watching its patterns, they could sense which tunnels were safe to explore and which held suffocating death. It was an ancient form of reading the environment, a skill born from necessity and sharpened by trial and error. Yet even with these breakthroughs, smoke remained a relentless adversary. Deeper chambers where air barely moved were death traps, and many would have succumbed to the toxic haze. Fires had to be managed not just for light, but for life itself. You can almost hear the hushed warnings passed down from elder to child. Keep the fire small. Watch the smoke. Don't linger where it settles. The cave was as much a teacher as any living being, demanding respect and careful listening. This intimate battle with smoke shaped more than just technology. It shaped social behavior. In close quarters, cooperation was vital. Someone had to tend the fire, monitor the air, and ensure the group's safety. Rules emerged, spoken and unspoken, about when and where to light flames, how many fires could burn at once, and how to share precious oxygen. The cave became a community bonded by survival, united by the shared struggle against the unseen threat swirling in the air. You think of the weight of that responsibility, how every flicker of light was a negotiation with the dark, every breath a silent prayer. The glow of the fire was never just comfort. It was a fragile victory, a momentary peace in a world that could turn deadly without warning. The very act of lighting a flame was an act of defiance against nature's cruelty. And yet, despite the ever-present danger, there was beauty in this dance. The curling smoke traced delicate patterns against the stone ceiling, shadows flickering like ghosts in the lamplight. Around the fire, stories were told, songs sung, and futures imagined, all under the watchful eye of the smoke that both threatened and protected. You wonder, if you were there, would you have felt the same awe? Could you have mastered the art of smoke, learning to read its subtle messages and adjust your fire accordingly? Or would the darkness have claimed you, swallowed by the very breath you needed to live? Because smoke is a reminder that every advance, every flicker of light in the dark, comes at a cost. The flames you trust can betray you, and survival is not just about conquering nature, but about understanding and respecting its limits. Have you ever found yourself in a smoky room, gasping for fresh air, feeling the walls close in? How do you think ancient humans balanced their desperate need for light with the dangers of smoke? If this chapter's tale of smoke and survival touched something inside you, share your thoughts below. The story of light and shadow is far from over, and the cave's secrets still whisper in the dark. There you go. This is a full, immersive 1,100-word script, paced and detailed to match your Ice Age sleeping technology style perfectly. Would you like me to continue with the next chapter? You move deeper into the cavern, the firelight casting trembling shadows that dance along the rough stone walls. The flickering glow does more than chase away the darkness. It pulls you closer, drawing you into a circle that transcends mere survival. Here, in the heart of the cave, fire becomes more than a tool. It transforms into a social beacon, a catalyst for human connection that would shape the very essence of who you are. Before this moment, the world was a raw, untamed place where every breath was a battle, every step a test of endurance. But now, gathered around the warmth of the flame, something profound happens. The fire's light draws faces out of the shadows, revealing expressions, emotions, and stories. You can feel it, the pulse of life quickening as people come together, united not just by necessity but by a shared experience. The cave's oppressive silence is broken by voices, soft murmurs growing into laughter, whispers evolving into tales passed from one generation to the next. You sense how fire transformed communication from simple survival signals into rich storytelling, a bridge between past and future. Around the fire, memories are etched into the flickering light, legends woven with every breath, forging a collective identity that extends beyond the individual. This was more than just social comfort. Firelight illuminated the bonds that knit groups together, turning isolated survivors into communities. You begin to understand that these gatherings around the flame were the first rituals, moments of shared vulnerability and celebration, where trust was built in the glow of warmth and light. Here, the seeds of culture, cooperation, and empathy took root, shaping human nature itself. You imagine the careful balance maintained within this fragile world. The fire was a symbol of safety and hope, yet it demanded respect and careful tending. Too small, and the group would be left in darkness and cold. Too large, and the smoke could suffocate, turning sanctuary into hazard. Managing this balance required cooperation and shared responsibility, strengthening social bonds through collective care. Fire also marked a shift in human perception. It extended your senses beyond the immediate and the tangible, allowing you to see in the dark, ward off predators, and explore deeper into the cave's mysteries. But beyond survival, it sparked curiosity and wonder, the flickering light revealing textures, shapes, and movements that the sun had never touched. It invited you to imagine worlds beyond the cave's walls and futures not yet written. You feel the primal pull of this shared flame, how it created a space for learning and innovation. Around the fire, skills were taught, knowledge exchanged, and ideas sparked. You sense how this communal light became a crucible for invention, laying the groundwork for the complex societies that would one day emerge. The fire was a center not just of warmth but of progress, a beacon guiding humanity out of darkness, both literal and metaphorical. Yet this firelight also carried power and meaning beyond the practical. It was a sacred symbol, a spark of the divine in the vast unknown. You can almost hear the reverent silence that must have fallen when the first flames were coaxed to life deep underground, a moment that blurred the lines between magic and reality. Fire became a focal point for rituals, a connection to forces greater than any one person, fostering a sense of belonging to something larger. You realize that fire's social role transformed the cave itself. What was once merely a shelter from the elements became a place of gathering, learning, and spiritual connection. The dark labyrinth took on new significance as a shared home, shaped by human presence and purpose. It was a stage for the earliest dramas of human history, acted out in the flickering glow. You wonder, if you were there, sitting close to the fire's edge, how would you have felt? Would you have sensed the sacredness in the flames, or just the comfort of warmth? Could you have joined in the stories and rituals, becoming part of a community that transcended the harshness of the world outside? Because fire was never just a tool, it was a spark that ignited human connection, the first light that illuminated not only caves but hearts. It was the beginning of everything that makes us human: cooperation, culture, and the courage to face the unknown together. Have you ever experienced the power of gathering around a fire? How it transforms strangers into friends and moments into memories? What stories would you tell if you were sitting there in that ancient cave, bathed in firelight? If this glimpse into fire's social flame sparked something in you, share your thoughts below. The circle is waiting, and the story is far from over. You step into the dim glow of the cave's flickering firelight, but what you don't see is the subtle transformation happening inside you, deep within your very cells, your bones, and your brain. This light, so fragile yet so vital, has done more than chase away darkness or warm your body. It has carved a path through your biology, shaping who you are in ways you never imagined. The mastery of fire, especially in the suffocating, oxygen-starved caves, was not just a survival tactic. It was a catalyst for human evolution itself. Imagine your ancestors, eyes adjusting to the weak, flickering light of fat lamps and torches, their pupils responding to shadows dancing on stone walls. This was no ordinary glow. It was a stimulus that rewired their vision, refining the way their brains processed light and shadow. The complex interplay of darkness and flame forced their eyes to adapt, sharpening peripheral vision, enhancing contrast sensitivity, and improving night sight, skills crucial for survival not only underground but in the wild world beyond. But the cave's low oxygen challenged more than just the eyes. Your lungs, too, faced a new kind of trial. The thick, smoky air demanded more efficient breathing, pushing respiratory systems to become stronger and more resilient. Over generations, those who could better endure smoky, low-oxygen environments thrived, their bodies subtly remodeled to cope with these harsh conditions. Your lungs became more efficient at extracting oxygen from thin, polluted air, a hidden legacy of those fires burning deep beneath the earth. The brain, your most complex organ, also felt the spark of fire's influence. The steady light extended your waking hours, allowing more time for social interaction, storytelling, and learning. This extra time wasn't idle. It fueled cognitive growth, stimulating neural connections that led to enhanced memory, problem-solving, and language skills. The fire's glow became a kind of biological metronome, packing the rhythms of your brain's evolution and lighting the way toward the complex societies you would one day build. You can almost feel the slow, persistent pressure of these environmental demands shaping your ancestors' bodies and minds. Each flicker of flame was a nudge, a subtle force that pried open the doors of possibility within your very DNA. The cave's suffocating air, the need to see in the dark, and the social gatherings around the fire created a crucible for change, a transformation that was both physical and cultural. What's more, the fire's heat encouraged changes in diet and digestion. Cooking food made nutrients more accessible, which provided the energy needed to fuel larger brains and more active lifestyles. The cave fires weren't just sources of light, they were metabolic engines, sparking a chain reaction that rewrote human physiology. Your body's ability to extract and utilize energy evolved hand in hand with your mastery of fire, each feeding the other in a complex dance of survival. Yet these changes were gradual, invisible to the naked eye but profound in their impact. The same fires that illuminated caves also ignited the slow forging of your humanity. Every breath drawn in smoky tunnels, every glance caught in flickering shadows, and every word spoken around the fire carved the contours of the human form and mind. You might wonder how such invisible forces could shape something as vast as evolution. But biology is not separate from experience. It is deeply intertwined with environment and behavior. Fire was more than a tool. It was a selective pressure, a persistent challenge that honed your ancestors' bodies for the world they were creating beneath the Earth's surface and beyond. You feel a quiet awe at this realization that the very light you now take for granted was once a powerful sculptor of flesh and thought. The cave's low-oxygen fires were more than a source of illumination. They were a forge in which human nature was hammered into shape. If you were living in those ancient times, surrounded by darkness and smoke, would you have sensed this transformation within yourself? Could you have felt the strengthening of your lungs or the sharpening of your sight? Or was it all just a subtle undercurrent beneath the roar of survival? Because this chapter of human history is not just about mastering fire, it's about how that mastery reached inside, changing you at the most fundamental level. It's a story of light and shadow, struggle and adaptation, etched into your very being. Have you ever thought about how the environment shapes your body and mind in ways you don't see? What changes might be happening inside you right now, silently guiding your evolution? If this sparked a new understanding of how fire shaped us, share your thoughts below. The journey from darkness to light continues, and your story is part of it. You step deeper into the cave, where shadows flicker and dance across walls stained with Earth's oldest colors: ochre reds, charcoal blacks, and smudged yellows. The light is fragile, trembling like a heartbeat from the small flame you hold. But here, in this fragile glow, something extraordinary begins to unfold: the birth of human expression. It's a moment suspended between survival and creativity, where firelight transforms stone into a sanctuary of stories, ideas, and art. Imagine the first time your ancestors traced fingers through pigment, their hands coated in mineral dust, as flickering flames cast ever-shifting light across the cave's rough surfaces. This was no mere decoration. It was a deliberate act of meaning-making, a radical leap into symbolic thought. The cave's darkness had once been an enemy to be conquered, but with the soft glow of primitive lamps, it became a sacred space, a gallery where humans could communicate beyond words, using images that would echo through millennia. But how did they manage this delicate dance of light and shadow? The technology behind their illumination was as inventive as the art itself. Torches were too crude, prone to smoke and unpredictability, so cavemen turned to fat lamps, small stone bowls filled with animal fat, their wicks made from moss or fibers. These lamps cast steady, low flames that offered more control over light, reducing flicker and smoke that could ruin a painting or suffocate the artist. This innovation wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about creating a controlled environment where expression could thrive. The soft, warm glow allowed artists to work deep within caves, in places no daylight could reach. Here, they painted animals they hunted, mysterious symbols, and abstract forms that still puzzle us today. The act of painting by candlelight was intimate and demanding, requiring patience, focus, and a deep connection to the space. You can almost feel the artist's breath, the steady pulse of their heartbeat, as they brought images to life on stone. Firelight shaped the very style of the art. Its flickering movement added a dynamic quality to the images, making animals seem alive, as if caught mid-motion. The uneven lighting emphasized textures, contours, and shadows, transforming static drawings into living scenes. This interplay of light and dark became part of the storytelling itself, a primitive animation powered by flame. But these artworks were more than decoration or storytelling. They were a bridge between the tangible world and the spiritual realm. Painted deep inside caves, away from the daily struggles outside, these images were likely part of rituals or ceremonies, expressions of hope, fear, and connection with forces beyond human understanding. The firelight, casting its ephemeral glow, was the medium that connected earthly existence to something larger and more mysterious. You might wonder how these early humans conceived such powerful imagery without written language or modern tools. But the cave art shows that creativity and communication are ancient, wired deep into your species. Firelight was the spark that made this possible, extending the boundaries of human experience and imagination. As you linger by the cave wall, you feel the weight of time pressing down, 1,000 generations illuminated by the same flame. This was a place where the human spirit found voice, where light met shadow, and where the darkness was transformed into a canvas of expression. What would you have painted if you held the lamp and the pigment? Would you capture the animals that sustained you, the stories you lived by, or something beyond, something unseen? How would the flicker of flame shape your message? Because this chapter of history is not only about fire's practical use, it's about how light kindled the first sparks of art, identity, and meaning. The cave became a gallery, and fire was the artist's most vital tool. Have you ever created something by candlelight, felt the intimacy and mystery of working in the shadows? What might this tell us about the origins of creativity and culture? If this glimpse into prehistoric art inspired you, share your thoughts below. The flickering journey continues, and the story is far from finished. You stand in the heart of the cave, the faint glow of your fire casting trembling shadows on jagged walls. The warmth is comforting, a fragile beacon in the swallowing darkness. But beneath that fragile comfort, there is a lurking danger, one that turns fire from friend to foe in the blink of an eye. The cave's breath is thin, the air already heavy with smoke, and every spark carries a risk. You can almost feel the panic rising as the flames suddenly flare, greedy and wild, threatening to consume everything you depend on. This is not just light, it is a razor's edge between life and death. In these tight, enclosed spaces, the balance of fire and air is precarious. A misstep with kindling or an ill-timed gust of wind could send smoke billowing like a toxic cloud, suffocating breath by breath. Your lungs seize as the black haze thickens, choking the oxygen out of the very air you need to survive. Every inhale is a gamble, every step forward a desperate push against the growing darkness. You realize how close you are to disaster, how easily the flame that once saved you could become your undoing. Flames don't just threaten your breath, they threaten the very structure around you. Caves are not stable fortresses, they are fragile, shifting worlds of rock and dust. A fire out of control can weaken supports, loosen stones, and cause tunnels to collapse without warning. You hear the unsettling crack of falling rock, a deafening echo that sends your heart racing. The path you came in on might vanish in an instant, burying you alive in the very shelter meant to protect you. But the danger isn't just physical. The psychological terror of fire gone wrong weighs heavily on your mind. In total darkness, with smoke choking your senses, the cave becomes a nightmare maze. Every flicker of light becomes a desperate hope or a cruel trick. You're trapped between the primal urge to survive and the chaotic force you once trusted. Fear claws at your throat, and the thin line between control and chaos feels impossibly fragile. You begin to understand why prehistoric humans developed not just fire-making skills, but fire management rituals, ways to keep the flame contained, the smoke vented, and the cave safe. They learned the hard way that fire was both a tool and a force of destruction. Stories passed down around campfires may have carried warnings as vital as tales of hunts or seasons, teaching each generation how to respect the volatile nature of their glowing friend. Despite every precaution, accidents happened. Archaeological evidence shows charred cave walls, collapsed chambers, and even signs of hurried, desperate escapes. You can almost hear the panicked breaths of those early cave dwellers, their pounding hearts matching the rhythm of flames consuming the dark. Each catastrophe was a brutal reminder of fire's dual nature, a giver of life and a harbinger of death. And yet, it's this very risk that sharpened human ingenuity. The fear of disaster forced early humans to experiment with ventilation shafts, fire placement, and materials that burned cleaner and longer. They became cautious engineers of their own survival, balancing on the edge of catastrophe to carve out safe havens in the underworld. You can feel the tension of every moment spent tending the fire, knowing that a single misstep could mean suffocation, collapse, or worse. It's a dance with danger that demands respect, patience, and deep knowledge passed down through generations. If you were there, surrounded by the roar and smoke, how would you hold your breath and steady your hands? Would you become a master of fire's fickle temperament, or would the cave's darkness claim you? Because this chapter is not just about survival, it's about the fragile trust between humans and fire, a bond tested by fear and disaster in the shadowed depths of the earth. Have you ever faced a moment where something meant to protect you almost destroyed you? How did that experience change the way you trusted danger? If this story of fire's peril moved you, share your thoughts below. The flickering journey into darkness continues, and the story is far from over. You stand in the dim silence of a cave long abandoned, your fingers brushing over stones that once cradled flickering flames. Around you lie fragments of a forgotten past, charred bone, scorched mineral, and delicate shards of pottery, whispering secrets of light lost to time. Despite millennia of study, the full story of how ancient humans conquered the darkness remains just beyond your grasp, a shadowed mystery that calls to your curiosity like an unfinished sentence. Archaeology offers clues, but also frustrating gaps. You find the charred remains of fat lamps, the faint traces of resin, and the occasional spark of mineral deposits that hint at fire's chemistry. Yet many things disappear without trace, tools too fragile to survive, techniques so subtle they leave no imprint. What other ingenious methods did your ancestors invent to push back the cave's suffocating blackness? What brilliance was lost to time, buried beneath layers of earth and forgetfulness? You imagine the vanished technologies, light sources crafted from materials now decayed, or fire-starting techniques so refined they left no visible scars. Perhaps your ancestors developed air channels within caves, subtle systems to feed oxygen to their flames, now collapsed or erased by centuries of geology. Maybe they harnessed bioluminescent organisms, using nature's faint glow alongside firelight, a symbiosis lost to modern eyes. Every discovery opens new questions. Why do some cave systems show evidence of sustained lighting, while others remain eerily dark? Could there have been regional innovations, passed down through secret traditions, now extinct? You sense the tantalizing possibility that our understanding of prehistoric light technology is only the tip of a vast iceberg submerged in mystery. Even the art painted on cave walls challenges you. The precise shadows, the careful placement of pigments, do they hint at lighting techniques now beyond your knowledge? Could hidden fires or lamps have been arranged to create specific effects, rituals illuminated by tools never found? The darkness itself seems to guard these secrets jealously, inviting your imagination to fill the gaps. This pursuit is more than academic. It touches on the core of human creativity and survival. The technologies lost to time were not mere tools. They were lifelines, innovations that shaped culture, safety, and identity. Each unanswered question is a testament to human ingenuity, daring you to rethink what's possible in the ancient world. You also realize how much modern biases may cloud your understanding. What seems simple or crude today could have been complex and sophisticated then. The gap between what survives and what once existed reminds you how history is shaped as much by loss as by discovery. As you trace your fingers over a fragment of charcoal, you feel the weight of generations whose light flickered and died, leaving behind tantalizing shadows. What if rediscovering their secrets could illuminate new truths about human history and the very nature of innovation? If you were an ancient inventor, what hidden method would you have created to tame darkness? What forgotten brilliance lies buried beneath the stones, waiting for curious minds like yours to uncover? Because this chapter is not just about what we know, it's about embracing the mystery of what we have lost and the thrilling possibility that much more remains to be discovered. What do you think is the most likely lost technology that could change our understanding of prehistoric cave lighting? Could we ever recover these secrets, or are they gone forever? If this peek into forgotten brilliance sparked your imagination, share your ideas below. The quest to understand ancient light is far from over. You step into a recreated prehistoric cave, the air cool and damp around you. Before you lies a carefully constructed scene, stones arranged just as they might have been tens of thousands of years ago, charred wood poised for fire, and vessels filled with animal fat waiting to be kindled. Here, in this modern laboratory of the ancient, you become a witness to a remarkable experiment, a journey to bring back the light of your distant ancestors, to feel firsthand the struggle and triumph of fire in the depths of darkness. You watch as experimental archaeologists, modern-day detectives of the past, methodically recreate the tools and techniques of prehistoric cave lighting. With flint stones in hand, they strike sparks, coaxing tiny flames into existence. The effort is painstaking. Fire does not ignite easily, especially when the air is thin and the environment unforgiving. You sense their frustration, their awe, and the intense focus required to achieve what your ancestors once mastered through trial, error, and generations of knowledge. As smoke curls upward and a small lamp flickers to life, you feel the weight of history settle around you. This isn't just science. It is a resurrection of ancient human ingenuity. You realize that understanding prehistoric fire is about more than studying artifacts. It's about stepping into the shoes of those who first dared to light the darkness, grappling with the same elemental challenges. Each successful flame is a triumph over time itself, bridging the gap between past and present. But the experiments also reveal limitations. Many methods that seem simple on paper prove fiendishly difficult in practice. The delicate balance of fuel, wick, and oxygen can mean the difference between a steady glow and a choking blaze. You watch how the slightest change in air circulation or material choice alters everything. These hands-on trials expose the immense skill and intuition your ancestors must have developed, skills lost for thousands of years and only now slowly rediscovered. Beyond fire making, these archaeologists explore ventilation techniques, building miniature shafts and channels to mimic natural cave airflow. You see how controlling even a small breeze can transform the flame's behavior, extending its life and protecting the air you breathe. This insight casts new light on ancient cave architecture, suggesting that what seemed like random rock formations may have been deliberate designs, part of a sophisticated approach to survival. As the flame steadies and warms the air, the laboratory fills with a flickering glow that feels strangely familiar, almost sacred. You realize how fire was more than utility. It was a source of comfort, community, and knowledge. The scientist's struggle becomes your own, a shared quest that connects you with a lineage of human resilience and curiosity. Yet questions linger. How close can these reconstructions come to the realities of prehistoric life? What innovations remain beyond reach, lost to time and circumstance? The experiments are both revelation and reminder of how much we still seek to understand about our ancestors' mastery over fire and light. You leave the recreated cave carrying a new appreciation for the profound challenge your ancestors faced and the brilliance they achieved. Every spark you witnessed was a fragile miracle, a testament to human determination and the will to conquer darkness. If you were in their place, struggling to ignite that first flame, how would you persist through failure? Would the flicker of success feel like hope itself? Because this chapter is about more than science, it is a bridge connecting you to the primal pulse of human innovation, a story rekindled in modern hands. Have you ever learned a skill by doing it yourself, discovering unexpected challenges along the way? How does hands-on experience change your understanding of history? If this glimpse into experimental archaeology lit up your curiosity, share your thoughts below. The journey to understand ancient fire continues, one spark at a time. You find yourself standing at the edge of a profound transformation, where flickering flames once fought the all-consuming darkness of caves, and in doing so, changed the course of human history forever. Imagine the moment when the mastery of fire underground was no longer just a desperate act of survival, but a catalyst that propelled your ancestors into a new realm of possibility. You feel the weight of this turning point, where light became more than illumination. It became a symbol of human ingenuity, connection, and progress. Before this breakthrough, life was ruled by the rhythm of daylight and the dangers lurking in the shadows. But as your ancestors learned to sustain fire in the suffocating depths of caves, they carved out a sanctuary from the wilderness, a space where time slowed and the mind could awaken. These underground hearths became places where stories were told, knowledge was passed down, and communities solidified. The glow of fire did not merely chase away darkness. It invited reflection, creativity, and planning for a future beyond the immediate. You feel the surge of human evolution wrapped in this flame, the way light extended the day, allowing minds to wander beyond mere survival. It was here that early humans began to develop language, ritual, and culture, sparked by the intimate gatherings around the fire. The cave, once a silent void, transformed into a crucible of civilization. This chapter invites you to see cave lighting not just as a technological feat, but as a profound leap toward what makes us human. But the mastery of fire in these oxygen-starved caves was no simple achievement. It demanded ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience. You imagine the countless trials, failed ignitions, suffocating smoke, moments of despair that shaped the knowledge passed down through generations. Every glowing ember was a victory won in the battle against nature's harsh limits. This struggle etched into the human spirit a relentless drive to adapt and innovate. In this struggle, fire also forged social bonds. The warmth and light created a shared experience that united tribes, strengthened kinship, and nurtured empathy. You realize that fire was a social beacon as much as a physical one, drawing people together in ways that reshaped the human psyche. The cave's darkness became a backdrop for light to illuminate not only space, but the very essence of community. Yet this turning point also raised new challenges. With fire came risks, smoke inhalation, accidental burns, and the ever-present threat of losing the fragile flame that held the darkness at bay. But these dangers underscored the value of fire and heightened the collective effort to protect and sustain it. You sense how this precarious balance between creation and destruction fueled the evolution of human intelligence and caution. You now stand at a crossroads yourself, witnessing how the mastery of fire underground laid the foundation for agriculture, art, technology, and civilization. It was not just the ability to light a cave. It was the beginning of human control over environment and destiny. The glow that once flickered in ancient caves still burns within you, a testament to the resilience and creativity that define your species. If you were there, would you have been the one to nurture that first flame, to gather your people in its warmth and light? Would you have felt the awe and responsibility that came with this newfound power? Because this chapter is about embracing the moment when fire ceased to be just survival and became a force that shaped humanity's future, when the darkness was not only fought but transformed. What do you think was the most profound impact of mastering fire underground on human society? How might your own life be different if this turning point had never happened? If this chapter illuminated new perspectives for you, share your thoughts below. The story of human fire continues to shape who we are today. You stand at the threshold between past and future, the glow of ancient flames still flickering in your mind as you consider what those first fires deep in the caves can teach you today. This isn't just a story locked in time, sealed beneath layers of stone and history. It's a living legacy, a beacon that continues to illuminate your modern world, revealing lessons in survival, sustainability, and innovation that echo across millennia. You begin to sense that the same spark that once saved your ancestors might still guide your own path through the darkness. In the depths of those caves, your forebears faced not only darkness but limits imposed by their environment: scarce oxygen, dangerous smoke, fragile materials. Their mastery of fire was born from necessity, creativity, and resilience. And now, as you navigate a world burdened by environmental crises and rapid technological change, their story resonates more than ever. You realize that ancient fire was not just about illumination. It was about learning to live in balance with nature's harsh realities, to adapt without destroying. You think about modern survival skills, the art of making fire with minimal resources, of controlling smoke to avoid danger, of harnessing natural materials thoughtfully. These are not mere curiosities, but practical wisdom passed down through ages. The fat lamp's gentle, steady glow speaks to sustainable energy sources. The careful ventilation strategies remind you of the importance of air quality, of respecting the environment even as you shape it. Every ancient flame flickers with lessons about conservation and innovation that are surprisingly relevant today. But beyond survival, the ancient fires teach a profound psychological truth. Light creates space for connection, creativity, and reflection. In your own life, surrounded by artificial illumination and constant digital glow, you're invited to pause and reflect on what it means to truly see and be seen. Those early gatherings around fire weren't just about warmth. They were about building community, sharing stories, forging identity. The cave's flickering light still whispers to you, urging you to rekindle human connection amid modern isolation. You also sense the metaphorical power of fire as a force of transformation. Just as your ancestors tamed flames to shape their world, you are called to harness your own inner sparks, to innovate, to challenge limits, to create new paths forward. The story of ancient fire is a reminder that every step into the unknown carries risks and rewards, that every glow begins with a fragile spark, and that perseverance is woven into the human spirit. And yet, the tale doesn't end here. You stand with the knowledge that the past is a foundation, but the future is an open flame waiting to be kindled. What ancient fire will you carry forward? How will you light your own way through the shadows of uncertainty? If you could bring one lesson from prehistoric fire mastery into your daily life, what would it be? How might your relationship with light and darkness change if you truly embraced this ancient wisdom? Because in these questions lies the living heartbeat of history, a call not just to remember, but to act, to innovate, and to connect. The story of fire in the cave is your story too, flickering in the present, waiting to blaze a path ahead. If this chapter sparked new insights for you, let your thoughts glow below. The journey of human light and shadow continues, bright, fragile, and full of possibility. You stand in the dimming glow of the last flicker, the ancient fire wavering between existence and oblivion. The warmth it once offered now feels fragile, almost sacred, like the final heartbeat of a long-forgotten era. Yet in this fading light, you grasp something profound. The story of fire is never truly over. It's a story of human curiosity, courage, and relentless ingenuity that has burned through the darkest ages and still lights your way today. This flame was never just about survival. It was about the daring to push beyond the known, to shape a world out of chaos and shadow. Your ancestors stared into the abyss of caves, where oxygen was scarce and darkness absolute, yet they did not turn away. They sparked a light that transcended mere necessity, a light that illuminated not only the physical space, but the vast inner landscape of human potential. As the fire's glow fades, you feel the pulse of that ancient spirit stirring within you, the same spark that kindled the first flame, the one that drove early humans to innovate against overwhelming odds. It reminds you that every discovery, every step forward, began with a flicker of hope in the dark. This is your inheritance, a legacy of resilience that challenges you to face your own unknowns with bravery and creativity. The cave's darkness was once a symbol of fear and limitation, but through fire, it became a canvas for light, warmth, and connection. In that transformation lies a timeless truth. Human progress is born where necessity meets imagination. You now carry that truth forward, understanding that every small spark can ignite monumental change. As the embers die, you are left with a quiet reverence for those first keepers of the flame, those who lit caves against all odds, and in doing so, lit the path for every human story since. Their courage was the first step in a journey that continues with you today in every challenge you face. So, as the last flicker fades into silence, ask yourself, what flames will you nurture in your own life? How will you carry forward the light of curiosity and courage into your future? Because the story of fire, like the human spirit, is never truly extinguished. It waits, patient and persistent, for you to kindle it anew. If this journey into ancient light has moved you, share your reflections below. The fire of human history burns on in your hands and in the world yet to come. As the story of ancient fires settles into the quiet embers of memory, you find yourself at the edge of something much bigger, a vast, unfolding mystery that connects every flicker of light across time and space. This isn't just history, it's a living invitation to explore, to question, and to marvel at the endless stories still waiting in the shadows. You've journeyed through darkness and flame, witnessing the ingenuity and courage that shaped what it means to be human. But remember, every discovery opens a door to new questions. What other secrets lie hidden beneath the surface of our shared past? How will you carry the spark of curiosity forward in your own life? The flames may dim, but your quest for understanding burns brighter than ever. Keep looking, keep wondering, and never stop chasing the light that once guided those first cave dwellers, and now guides you. If this story has sparked something within you, subscribe and join us for the next chapter in humanity's incredible journey. Because every flicker of light once held a story waiting to be told, and yours is next.